Do you have what it takes to be an architect? How long do you need to study to become one? Kell is an architect based in the United States. We met in Rome way before Facebook, and she was already an architect. She joins me today to share her personal experience. Let's listen. What is your academic background, Mary?
Thanks, Laura, for having me today. Appreciate that. So, academic background, high school, and then college at the University of Kansas. It's a 5-year degree, is Bachelor of Architecture.
Bachelor of Architecture. Okay, is that all you need in order to be an architect afterwards?
Well, when I graduated, and it's a little bit different now, but when I graduated, they require that you intern in a firm for a minimum of 3 years. You have to get certain sorts of experience. So you have to, and it has to be documented, and they have to approve your 3 years plus of an internship. Sometimes you get it within 3 years. Sometimes it takes a little longer depending on where you work. That would include things like drafting. So picking up red lines is what they call it when you're making changes to drawings, meeting with clients, going on construction site visits, all sorts of just project management things that get you prepared to actually take the test. And that's a minimum of 3 years.
3 years, okay. And how many branches are there as an when you study? What do you need to do a major in like a specific branch?
Not typically. You might look at the school that you attend and see if they have a specialty, but generally there's one course that you can do a Bachelor of Architecture. You can minor in structural engineering. You can minor in electrical engineering and some of the other engineering fields. But in general, the universities will offer architecture as one course. And I would say the accredited universities are what I would recommend, because when you attend and graduate from an accredited university, you can then sit for your license. And so that's after school and after internship, then you can apply to sit for your license.
Okay. And that takes another few months or more?
Well, good question again, because when I graduated, they offered the exam, which was 9 separate tests once a year. And so you would take 2 tests a day, Monday through Thursday, and then Friday was a 12-hour design exam. So you take that all in 1 week in person. It's evolved over the years, and now all of the tests are taken online. So it's up to everybody to schedule them individually, and you just take one at a time. So I did a combination of sitting for them all at one time and also the online portion, because if you don't pass them, you have to retake them. But they'll allow you to keep the ones you passed, and you have to pass all of them within a 5-year period.
Okay.
It sounds like a lot of time, but if you're working and you're, living life, it's up to the person to schedule them, and it's easy to put it off if you're not disciplined about it.
Yeah. So going back to university times, what were typical subjects that you would be learning during your years at university for someone who has never heard of architecture before?
So the basics would include calculus, physics, English, some different just kind of base level college courses. And then studio ends up taking probably the most of your time. And that depends on the school. Every school kind of does it differently, but where I attended, studio would start first year. And so you'd have a studio every year, 1st through 5th years. The higher level years, it ends up taking, that becomes, so it's a class time, but then project time after hours. So you might be given the assignment for a studio project, and it could be an individual project, it could be a team project, and then it's up to the student to work on the project after hours and meet the deadline. And then once you finish the project, then they typically have a critique session where the professor and students get to see your work and critique it. The professor critiques it, but it's pretty competitive. Everyone's watching what everyone else is doing. So all that to say is that the more levels you get, the more time you typically spend in studio. The projects are a little bit more involved, more things to consider, more things to, more people to involve, like as in a team, presentations, things like that just take a little bit longer. The higher level studio that you're in.
Okay. Now, I have a basic question. Is it a problem if you can't really draw?
That's a good question. And, I hate to sound like the old timer here, but when I was in school, we had to do everything by hand. My 5th year, we had a computer lab. We all had a kind of learned how to draw on AutoCAD as one of the typical systems. So it's a computer aided drafting, basically, is what CAD stands for. But you have to also know how to draw in by hand. I know now, and it's been several years, there's a lot of people that go through school and they don't know how to draw by hand. And it's kind of a lost art. I would say sketching and just practicing kind of hand-eye coordination is important. And if you're like, when I was becoming interested in architecture at the age of probably about 15, I already liked to sketch. I liked art. I liked things like that. So it was kind of natural for me to go out and sketch something. And you'll have classes in school where you will sketch, or they'll say, hey, we're going out and we're going to sketch downtown or something like that. And so you practice it. But to get back to your question, do you have to be a good drawer to be an architect? I would say no. I would say you're probably already somewhat interested in it, but not a firm requirement. No.
Okay. That's good to know.
Long way of answering that one. Sorry.
No problem. That was important to say that, because I imagine I would have, for instance, not picked architecture if I had not been a good, if I couldn't draw very well, but probably that was that was not the right mindset.
Well, yeah. I mean, I liked, just in my own experience, I liked drawing, but I didn't feel like I was original enough to make it as an artist, like as a profession. So for me, it blended art with math and science. I excelled in those fields. I don't use a ton of that now, but you do use some when you're looking at sun angles or just basic geometry. Of course, now the computer can do all of that for you, but yeah, so that does come in handy. But I think part of what I liked was just the practicality of designing something that gets built versus just sketching something that ends up in an art gallery, for example. So.
Okay. Yeah. No, I see. Actually, that was going to be my another question. When you finished school, high school, what was attracting you about architecture? You must have been 17, 18 when you decided to go to school, to the university. What were you envisioning for your future?
I think right out of high school, so I went right into college. So it was a 5-year program. It actually took me 6 years because I had to repeat a class, and there's a lot of people take 6 years because the course load is fairly high sometimes with studio. You have to balance a lot of late nights in the studio. But I think I was envisioning, I'm going to get out of college and I'm going to own my own firm and, design skyscrapers. That was kind of my thought. Like, just everybody does that, right? And I would say what was different was I got out of college. The economy was not good. I ended up biking cross country. And then 6 months later, when I was looking for a job, I found a job. And I had 2 or 3 places to interview to select from. So I selected one of those and I started working. When you first start working, I would say you don't know anything. You think you know everything, but what you learn in school is very valuable. They teach you how to design, how to dream big, how to, envision these, life-changing buildings and things. And that's great. And you need that. When you get to a design firm, it's typically the principal or a couple of the senior level staff that do the designing. The entry level people They're drawing details. They're, in my case, again, it was a long time ago, running blueprints or doing red lines, or, you might be taking notes for a meeting, things of that nature, until you get up to speed with having enough information to be someone who's a resource in your firm. And it just takes a while to go through all the pieces of a project and contracting and designing and all that. So,
what did you find the hardest at the beginning of your career?
That's a good question. It was a little bit at first, maybe, I don't know, this might not be a good word, disappointing a little bit, only because, wow, I'm not immediately designing skyscrapers, because that's kind of an initial thought. But soon after kind of got over that, when you learn kind of how complex the business is, there's the design and the contracting, the insurance that goes behind the contracts, what you can authorize as an architect versus what you can't. What are your design parameters? How does that affect health, safety, welfare? How do the building codes enter into it? There's just a lot of different pieces. And so once I got going, it was good to have a senior level person as a mentor. And that's one of the things I think everyone should, especially in this profession, have as a mentor, and maybe, different mentors along the way to help kind of guide and, bounce questions off of.
So you got your first job. How long did it take you to then become actually a resource, like you were saying, like becoming a resource for the company, and maybe you had your own projects? What was the time span for that?
So my first job, I worked 3 years, and I've changed jobs probably 4 or 5 times in my career. And I tell that to people too. First company was about 25 people. I went from that to a 2-person firm. So my first 3 years, I was in my internship, and I actually did complete my hours in those first, to be able to sit for my license in the first 3 years. I then moved to the second company, where it was the owner and I, basically. So in that one, it's very, when you're one of 2 people, you get to do it all and you get to see it all. So I learned a ton in that one, because it was kind of trial by fire, because everything, phone call comes in and the boss isn't there. I've got to figure out, hey, what's the best? Can I answer this? Do I have enough experience? Do I not have enough experience? And early on, it's like, hold on, I don't know anything type deal. But the more you get to, you're just working day by day, you learn what you learn, and you understand that, and you're able to provide that to others. Let's see, probably, I know I was kind of a secondary client contact within the first 3 years, probably towards the end of that. And then primary client contact or project manager is generally that role. In some companies, you'll have a project manager and a project architect, and depending on the size of the company, they may be 2 different roles. In a smaller company, that person is probably the same person. So I was probably managing my own projects within, I would say, the first 5 to 6 years. I sat for my exam when I was working for the second company. We had a study group. There's a lot of us studying together at the same time. So we'd meet, after our jobs and get together. They had flashcards. I think they still have those, and just get together as a group. And very, very helpful, because we're all kind of going through it at the same time. We all have full-time jobs. You have to be actively intern to be able to really to sit for the exam. So it's a very kind of a gradual learning curve. I never felt like, okay, now I know it all. I've never had that feeling. I would say probably about 10 years into my career, it was, okay, I know some things now. I can be valuable. And it sounds like a long time, and it is, but mainly because there's so many pieces to it. It's not just drawing. It's drawing and understanding how it's built, what the engineers need from you to start their part of the design, how you work with others, how you work with the client, how does that affect the budget and the schedule. all of those things are kind of part of it. So, and you gradually learn, and people come from different backgrounds and different jobs. And so, over the years, you get opportunity to work with people that are more specialized in healthcare, for example, or retail, or multifamily apartment complexes, or office buildings, or zoos, or, there's so many different types of projects that you could be designing too. So
from a layman's perspective, such as myself, like when you have a project like building a multi-family house, who takes care of the budget? Is it the architect?
it usually, again, kind of depends on the firm, but it's usually the project manager. It's a combination. It's usually a team approach, but a combination of probably 2 or 3 different people. So project manager is going to be in control of the budget, schedule, and usually at least has a concept of the design and kind of the big picture things that are happening. Different firms do it differently. There might be a group that only does contracts. And then once the contracts are signed between the architect and the client, then the contract is given to the project manager or the project architect. And they are, read the contract, understand it ideally, and then, oh, okay, this is how many hours I have to deal with for this portion. Pre-design, design, construction drawings, and then bidding, and then overseeing the project when it goes out to bid for the construction phase.
Okay. Can you tell me what is your job today and what is your typical day at work?
Good one. Yes. Okay. So in the first, I think about 17 years of my career, I was in private practice architecture firms. So varying sizes. So sometimes just architecture, sometimes architecture engineering firms, AE firms, as they call them, through 2008. In 2008, we had a kind of a worldwide economy.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was not a good time in 2008. A lot of things happened. The company I was working for kind of closed its doors overnight. And so it kind of caused me to rethink. It's one of those times in your career, you're like, should I stay in this career? Because my company just closes doors overnight. It's kind of shocking when it happens. So I went into public architecture. So now, since 2008, I've worked for a municipality. And so I am actually the owner's rep for the city in overseeing projects. So I'm more of an owner's rep as an architect, overseeing the contracts, budget, schedule, and all of that. And so I help select the architects and the construction managers. They will make submittals to us, and we'll score the submittals. We'll interview the groups and then select them. With public money, you have to have everything very transparent. And so it's a little bit different. Timelines get stretched out because of more steps in the process, more eyes on each project. So a typical day, let's see, I might be preparing a status report in the morning over a group of projects, going to a site visit on a project that's in construction to talk with the architects and the construction manager and kind of review the status of the project, see what's going on with that specific project, what questions have come through, what answers they need from not only the consultant, the architect, but myself as the owner. RFIs, requests for information, that's a typical term. So we might be going over some of that, usually has schedule and budget as part of that sort of meeting. Get back to the office, check emails kind of intermittently, which I'm also checking them on my phone in between as possible, or in the office. Checking invoices, that's pretty routine thing that I do. Checking drawings when I have them in. I'll review the drawings, and in my current role as the project manager for the architectural portion, I would talk with the other engineers in our group at our city and get their input from like wastewater, stormwater, streets, because that's all part of the project, and their input has to go into the final product before it goes out to bid.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
A lot of things.
Yeah. I could envision you on your day at your work at your office outside. Are there actually any myths about your job as an architect?
Well, I think so. I think one of the myths is, architects make a ton of money. I think, they're wealthy, and I would say, I feel like I do okay. I'm paid well for what I do, but it's definitely not a get rich quick sort of profession. I would say if you don't like it, it's a hard road. I feel like, I think of the greats like Frank Lloyd Wright, who, he died at 91, but he was probably designing right up until the day he died. It's one of those professions you can always be learning, growing, designing. I'm learning stuff every day from all sorts of people, not only construction, but other employees, clients, how they run their business affects how you design a building. That all has to factor into it. So, but I'd say, yeah, the myth of, hey, you're wealthy because you're an architect, not necessarily. It takes years to build up and, accumulate. And I would say for people that want to go into the field, definitely go to a school that's accredited so you can get your license. If you are a licensed architect, you can demand more pay because, again, there's years of internship and, all the tests you're graded on to get the test, to get the license. But I know there's people that go to school and never get their license. It's, kind of a long process right now there's 6 tests, used to be 9, but you have to schedule them all individually. You have to pay for them all individually. And if you fail one, you have to retake it. You don't get to keep taking it for free. You have to keep taking the test. And they're about $230 a piece right now. So,
okay.
It
adds up. Yeah, for sure.
It does. And some firms pay for the test and some firms do not. So that's also a good thing. If you're looking to get licensed, it's something to check into. It's a question to ask your employer because it really makes a difference when you're first starting out. You don't make as much, and you won't until you get the license.
So based on this, what would you tell to someone who would like to enter this line of work? What would be your advice?
I think getting a mentor is really helpful. And a way to do that, the AIA, the American Institute of Architects, we have chapters in, every city of, I would say 500,000 or more was probably going to have an AIA chapter.
Okay.
In Oklahoma, we have 2 for the whole state, but generally Oklahoma City and Tulsa are the biggest population, the biggest cities that we have. So we have a chapter for each one. But the AIA can point you in the direction of, hey, we can connect you with practicing architects who might be interested in being your mentor. I actually have a mentor now. Mentee now. She goes to OU, Oklahoma University. And it's just great. We can talk about, she can ask me any question. I like to share that sort of information of, hey, what worked for me, what didn't work for me.
That's great.
I think something else to recommend is do summer internships if you can in offices. Really kind of helps focus your time during school to understand what you need to focus on. Something I wish I'd done is frame houses, like go out on a crew and frame houses with some roofers. You're going to learn a ton about how wood works, how pieces go together, how does the detail translate to what the person's building? What is that interface? So I got this set of drawings from the architect, but I can't build it. It's not drawn very well or whatever, so you kind of get to see the things that when you get in the field are, there are issues. Like if you can't communicate what you're drawing or what you want to have constructed through a drawing, you have to work on that. That's really one of those things that you don't understand how the other side sees it until you try to see it from that side.
Yeah, that's a very good point. To end on a fun note, do you have a fun anecdote that you would like to share?
Well,
I'm
um,
sure you have many.
yeah, let's see. I'm trying to think.
Some that can be told.
Right, right. Well, I was thinking about that a little bit. So the Brady Bunch was, popular when I was growing up. It had 6 kids, and the dad was an architect. And in my family, I'm the youngest of 6, so I would be Cindy, right? I'd be the youngest. But I remember watching that as a kid growing up, thinking, I want to be an architect. Like that's, watching. It's a TV series, right? But you watch stuff growing up, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. It kind of got me thinking, even though it's just a TV show. But oh, what does Mike the architect do every day? Oh, he goes into the office and he draws and he's able to present to clients. And something about that was just, I don't know. It definitely influenced me as a kid. And I have to admit that. So everyone's like, oh, Brady Bunch is the reason you wanted to be an architect. Well, it did have some influence. I would say that. So.
Yeah, it's true that I mean you can get ideas from any kind of source or occasions in life, and this is also why I'm doing this podcast, because there are so many jobs out there that people don't know about. Even I don't,
Right.
I didn't know that there such a thing as a nevologist, like an expert of the snow.
Oh, wow. I
Yes.
wouldn't know that.
And now that I live in Switzerland, this is has become quite common for me, to know about avalanches and snow reports and all these. But before that, like who knew? Same
Right.
thing
Right.
as behavioral economists. That sounds so fascinating, right?
Right.
And so the idea is to really be, give input or ideas to people that would otherwise not thought of this before. So I can totally relate to your to the TV
Yeah.
series you were watching when you were young, and made a good imprint.
Yeah, it did. It was, I don't know. I think I've memorized many of those, many of the lines of the storylines. So,
Yeah,
oh, I
no,
know
for
which one
sure.
this one is.
And before I leave you, is there anything else that you would like to share with us?
I would just encourage people, if they want to be, if they're thinking about being an architect, again, reach out to your advisor, reach out to, I think, the local AIA chapters. It sounds like a jump, but I know our chapter does a Camp T Square. It's a week-long camp for middle school kids. And, it kind of gets them thinking about, hey, is this even something I'd like to do? Like they get a project of, hey, this is a little town you're building. Okay, now the 4 of you have to build the town, as a little model, and you have to discuss what you're going to do, who's doing what, and then you're going to have to explain it at the end. So, things like that to get you used to working with other people. And, if that sounds fun to you as a middle schooler, it might be something that you pursue later, because I think by the time you get to the end of high school or college, you have to already kind of have picked something. You don't have to, but just because the school, I mean, it takes a while. It's a 5-year program. So it's one of those, if you think you might like it, try it. And you'll know pretty quick. When I went to school in college, I would say about 40% of people dropped from the first year through graduation. So, but I think it's one of those things, if you really like I cannot imagine myself doing anything else, because I really feel it's very exciting to be able to be part of drawing something that becomes a built thing that people can experience and become influenced by, just by being in the space. I mean, you go to beautiful cathedrals like La Sagrada Familia, and you're changed after you go in the building. I mean, you really are. It's amazing what a building can do. Like, anyway, so there's just the ability to be a part of that is very exciting. And I think if that sounds cool to someone, pursue it. Like you said, like you asked earlier, you don't have to be an A+ artist to do it. I mean, there's a lot of pieces that go into that. It's a lot of just understanding how things go together too. So,
Excellent. Thank you. And my very last question to you is, what do you plan to do next?
well, I love architecture. I'll be doing that for a little while yet. Want to phase into doing more voiceover. that kind of combines my love of learning, because I love to learn about all sorts of different projects and subjects, and voiceover kind of allows, through narration and other things, to kind of become a mini expert on those things as you're discussing them. There's something, I think, very powerful about speaking something that kind of helps your mind learn it versus just reading about it or listening. Speaking and writing, I think you learn it a lot quicker, I guess. And I've been a lifelong student, and I want to keep doing that. So voiceover seems like a good fit from that standpoint. And yeah, so I'm phasing into that.
Yeah, and you have a beautiful voice. So next time, maybe a year from now, when you're going to gain experience, we'll have another interview.
Great. Yes, I would love that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yes. And I want to thank you very much, Mary. It's been very special, also because we've known each other so long. And
I know.
Yeah, it was so good to know more about your job.
Yes. Yeah.
Because we usually talk about hikes and travels, which is also
right.
passions of ours. But yeah, your job is very fascinating. And thank you so much. I think you've given a lot of good hints and points and pointers for either young or even older students, or let's say older people that would like to change
of life. Yeah.
In the middle of their life. And we can change anytime, right? And,
right.
And luckily today it's possible, more and more possible. So that's the beauty of living in our era. So I want to thank you again so much, and hope to see you very soon.
Okay. Well, thank you, Laura. This has been a blast. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Do you have more questions for Mary? Is there another career you're interested in that you would like me to cover? Write me at jobtalespodcast@gmail.com. Speak to you soon.